Right, I'm here with Ruma from the Constitution Party, or actual founder of the Constitution Party.
More correctly, the New Zealand Constitution.
New Zealand Constitution Party, that's right, we should get that right. Now, what I was wondering was, because this will be something that a lot of people will be curious about, I think, is do we not actually have a constitution at the moment? And if not, why do we need one?
You're asking me two questions. So
Yes.
The first one is, do we have a written constitution? No, we don't. Even though New Zealand is described as being a constitutional monarchy, that's actually a legal or a political fiction.
Yeah.
And
I
to
think a
get
lot,
around it, the politicians and the legalese people classify us as being a constitutional monarchy with an unwritten constitution.
oh,
But
okay.
that's confusing to me.
Yeah, because I think a lot of people just assume that we've probably got a constitution and don't realise this.
Yes, and that assumption is false,
Yeah.
obviously.
Yeah.
To put it in context, almost every country in the world except 3 have a written constitution.
Oh, okay.
So that's New Zealand, the UK,
Yeah.
and Israel, they don't have a written constitution. I think Canada of sorts has a constitution. Each of the states in
Yeah.
Canada have a written constitution, but as a federal government, no, they don't.
And America's probably the one that everyone knows has a constitution.
Yep. And it's that particular constitution is the standard by which all
Yeah.
other constitutions are measured. But to answer that question, no, we don't have one.
And that's a good example, the American one is a good example of the next question, which is why do we need one? Because we're used to Americans referring to their constitution on a lot of issues. Some of them we may not fully agree with the issue they're talking about, but they do refer to their constitution, and this goes a long way to why do we need a constitution?
Yep. Simply put, a constitution is a document, instrument, which establishes a lot of standards, values, and it provides a frame of reference. And so with a written constitution, we know what our rights are because they're all enumerated in the constitution. The most important thing that a constitution can do for us is actually describe what our rights are, and we're talking about political rights, and we're talking about specifically political freedoms.
Yeah.
One of the things that the founding fathers of America sought to do was to make certain freedoms inalienable,
Yeah.
cannot be derogated from, cannot be removed. They wanted to ensure that those rights were entrenched in their law, and one of those rights was political freedom.
Yeah.
Religious freedom.
Religious freedom.
To politize that value was important to them because these men were religious men,
Yeah.
and they recognized that if you wanted to have all other freedoms, you had to first establish and entrench that one.
Yeah.
The right to worship according to the dictates of a man's conscience.
Yeah.
I think that's how they put it. And it follows, therefore, if you entrench that right to worship as you may according to your conscience, then it follows that the next freedom that you ought to entrench, which they thought was very important, was the freedom of speech.
Yeah.
One is they are two separate freedoms or rights, correct?
Yeah.
but they're correlated.
Yeah.
You cannot have one or the other.
And the one thing I've always found amusing with the whole concept of a constitution, the fact that we don't have one, and should have one, is the fact that any trust that is formed has to have a written constitution or trust document that's the root guidelines for a trust. And that's what you're judged against when it comes to, is your trust doing what they're supposed to do?
Yes, one doesn't necessarily have to have a written document to establish that trust, but if you don't have it, how do you measure the degree of trust?
Yeah,
How do you measure the integrity of the relationship formed within that trust? You can't.
no,
There must be some way to describe it, prescribe it, for and that if that trust is important, there must be some way to refer to it and to identify the nature of it at some future point in time when there is a misunderstanding for those.
yeah,
between
or
those
when
interested parties.
when the people that formed the trust, or in this case formed the constitution, whatever it is, are no longer around.
Correct.
Because if you and I formed a group, a collective, and we had definite guidelines as to the direction we wanted that to go, that's fine while we're still around because we know the direction we're going. It's still not ideal, but if we put that on paper, then presuming that the collective that we start goes on beyond our death,
Correct.
right, or our participation, then others know what our intent was
Correct.
and can follow that.
Correct. Memory is fickle, and especially after death.
Yeah, yeah. People start arguing about what we said. Yeah,
And that document will then be important to the executors
yeah,
and also important to the beneficiaries of it.
yeah,
And so, particularly if the beneficiaries are going to be passing down those rights to their successors,
yeah,
and you might have 3 or 4 or 5 different generations who are still alive thinking, oh, well, what are our benefits? What
Yeah.
we are entitled to. So that notion supports the notion that you need to have a written constitution.
yeah.
I understand that there was a statement made by one of our professors in respect of whether or not we should not have a written constitution, and she made the statement that if you have a look at other countries that have a written constitution, those written constitutions haven't necessarily worked. She didn't explain why they didn't work, and I would like to suggest a theory.
Yeah,
And the reason why they didn't work is the people that were responsible to administer it were not competent to do so,
yeah,
or they had hidden agendas. Any document, any contract will work if the terms are specified
yeah,
and both parties agree to the terms, right?
yeah,
Any constitution will work if those terms of that constitution are clearly specified, identifies who have an interest in that constitution or the terms of that constitution and are willing to abide by it. The minute you have one party or several parties who decide no, they're not going to be bound by it, it's not going to work, is it?
no,
And it's not because the terms were not sound. You can actually have a bad written constitution. The terms can be really, really bad, but good people can make bad constitutional terms good.
yeah,
And bad people can make good constitutional terms ineffectual.
yeah,
It's not the document, it's not the written constitution, it's not the trust document that is makes it workable or unworkable. It's the people that rely on it make it workable or
yeah.
unworkable.
It's the determination of the people concerned to make sure it works.
Yep.
Yeah,
And good people make good we're talking about constitution. Good people make good constitutions better.
Yeah.
Good people make bad constitutions good. Bad people make good constitutions bad.
Yeah.
So it's the
it looks,
people you look to.
it looks like we're going to get rained out at the moment.
But at least it gave us an
yeah.
opportunity to talk
Yeah.
about that one part. Right?
Yeah, which I think is the most important part of what the party's about, because it's in the name.
Correct.
And I think that's important. So thanks very much for that. And we might see if we can pick another location and talk about another couple of
Okay.
issues.
Sounds good. Paul.
Thanks.